Good evening to the attendees that's already on. I'm going to wait a few more minutes for more people and then we can start. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. Good evening and welcome to the HFA Webinar, Managing Unconscious Bias. I am Dolores Stump-Vickers, HFA Officer and Director at Katz Sapper & Miller. Pursuant to HFA Black Lives Matter statement, we committed to an ongoing action plan, which includes education to foster diversity and inclusion. The webinar is a pledge to that action plan. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing you to our dynamic speaker, Suri Surinder. Suri is the CEO and co-founder of CT Factor, a woman and minority-owned advisory service firm that has been recognized for their expertise in leadership, diversity, and equity inclusion. CT Factor serves both public and privately held corporations, universities, associations, not-for-profits, and foundations. Thank you, Suri. Let's get started.
Hey, thanks, Dolores. Thanks, everybody. I know you guys are busy, lots of work to do. I appreciate you being here. It's 6 o'clock Eastern time. I'm sitting in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and hopefully you guys and gals are all over the country and hopefully are able to join us at whatever time works for you. I see that we have 13 attendees on the call. I hope we can increase that number. So I'm going to take the first few minutes just to go over some few housekeeping items, and hopefully in the time that I finish this initial segment, we'll have more people join us. Dolores saw me speak at a New York State CPA Society meeting. I'd just come in from Brussels on a long flight, and I was at the end of the session. I was between the participants and drinks, and I must have done something to impress her, because she called me after that and introduced us to Mitch, the CEO and the president of Hedge Fund Association, and that has started a good relationship. I hope today's session proves to be exciting, insightful, informative, and entertaining for you. I want to tell you a little bit about myself, since you don't know me. My current incarnation is as an entrepreneur. For the past 12 years, I've been the co-founder and CEO of my company, CTR Factor. CTR stands for credibility, trust, and respect. It is the basis of our leadership model that we train people on, and that's how we got started in the business. So we dance with the one that brung us. So that's our name, CTR Factor. Prior to being an entrepreneur, and even today, I'm an educator. I was chief learning officer at a bunch of places, head of executive education at the University of Arkansas, adjunct professor at Baruch College. Some of you might be from New York City, might be familiar with Baruch, the largest business school in the world in Gramercy Park. Prior to that, I was an executive at large companies like Verizon, McKinsey, Capital One, CenturyLink, Barclays, and early in my career at Pfizer. So that's sort of, and that was about 25 years of my life, maybe a little bit less than 25 years of my life. So, and then I've been a board member at a bunch of places. I have been a speaker in financial services. This is the select list of companies that we have been in front of, and you'll recognize a few alternative investment companies on the list, obviously some larger banks. And then I'm a lifelong learner. I have a couple of degrees, but I never stop learning. It's kind of like, I always say that I've been to HKU. Nobody has heard of HKU, but it's Hard Knocks University. It's like Hotel California by the Eagles. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. I am a continuous attendee at HKU. I learn every single day. I make mistakes every single day. I hope I don't make the same mistakes over and over. But that's me in a nutshell. I'm looking forward to chatting with you. We will have a fairly open discussion, I hope, and you should feel free to do that in two ways. Okay, there's a chat box. Hopefully you'll see it in the right side of your screen where you have the little thingamajig where it says, webcam, audio, dashboard, chat. So if you come to chat and click on that little arrow, the chat box will open up and you can say whatever you want, stream of consciousness. I'll be monitoring it periodically. I won't be in it all the time, but periodically I'll go into the chat box and see what you guys are saying and respond. So please feel free to use the chat box. Don't wait for me to ask you a question. Continue to just type in stuff as it occurs to you, whether it's a question, a comment, and other folks will learn from that as well. So don't deprive other people of your experience. Trust the force, Luke and Lukettes. You know more than you might realize about this topic. So don't second guess yourself. You don't have to be perfectionist today. You're perfectionists at work. I want you to be imperfectionist today, right? Trust that first half-baked thought, the half-formed idea, and out with it. Come out with it. Don't worry. For the next hour and 45 minutes, wherever you are, think that we're in Vegas, and what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, unless it happens to go on Facebook, in which case it lives forever. But this is a safe environment. You can say anything on your mind. You don't have to agree with me. You can disagree. I love that. That tells me you're engaged. I'd rather you disagreed with me than stayed silent. The opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is indifference. So if you don't love me, that's okay. At least hate me, okay? So please go into the chat room, and I see some of you are doing it already because I see the flickering sign on my screen. I'm going to check it out shortly, what you're saying. The second way to interact is to raise your hand, your digital hand, and then we'll unmute you. I think all of you are muted at this point, and I think you may not have the capability to unmute yourself. We do that just to make sure the background noise isn't there. I got a beagle, honestly, I got a beagle in my house, and the beagle bugles, so you might have dogs, kids, any background noise, so that's the only reason we mute you. I hope you're okay with that. But if you raise your hand, we will unmute you, and then you can speak your mind as well. So chat and speak. Those are the two ways to interact. I do want to take you through a little bit of a background about who we are as a company, if the slides will cooperate with me. We are a certified minority-owned, woman-owned small business, and we have been in the advisory and executive education space in leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion for 12 years. We have a presence in pretty much every region of the US, and some of our clients are global as well. As you know, Hedge Fund Association, I think, is in 4 continents, 12 countries. So we're a global organization here at HFA, and so are we. We have global clients. In fact, we've been fortunate and blessed to have supported 162 clients in 12 different sectors over 12 years, much to our own surprise, by the way. When we started, we had 0 clients. We had 1 topic that I could speak about. I'd break into a cold sweat if you asked me to speak about anything else. And we've come a long way since then. We have more than 100 topics that we talk about. On our team, we have C-level executives with extensive corporate experience. Some of them have alternative investment experience as well. So I personally haven't been in the hedge fund space, but I am a retail investor, and I do fairly complex options trading. So I do know derivatives. I do broken wing butterflies, and I do iron condors, and iron butterflies and all of that good stuff, okay? But you guys know probably, you know that better than I do, I'm sure. But I am familiar with hedge funds, alternative investment approaches, leverage, arbitrage. I am familiar with that, even though I've not spent any time in the industry. I've been in the financial services industry for a while. I was a senior executive at Capital One and at Barclays. We also have industry, domain, and constituency-based practices. We have 6 different offerings, global in-language capabilities, multiple delivery approaches. And I want you to remember this, because while we're doing this, for you guys, and I hope you get a lot out of it, we would love to extend the impact of what we're doing into your companies. If you like what you hear today, I will not be ashamed to shill and to come to you and say, get us to come into your companies, because we have a certificate program in inclusive leadership for the investments industry that I think will blow your mind, okay? I won't take you through this long list, but we have a bunch of clients. I want you to see that. I'm just gonna rush through this real quick. These are the 162 clients I referred to, and you can see they're in 12 different sectors. Accounting is a big sector for us. I know some of us are in the service provider space within hedge funds, so I know Dolores, for example, is a CPA, and also banking and financial services. You'll see a few names that are familiar to you: Wellington Financial Management, William Blair, Guggenheim, so some of these are familiar names. And then obviously we have a lot of big banks, which are also, part of HFA. We have 2 books out. I'd love for you to go on Amazon. They're very inexpensive, cost the price of a cup of Starbucks coffee. If you like what you hear, it's on leadership. I think you'll like it. Here's some information about us. We'll send you a PDF version of selected slides of the presentation if you want it. We know where you live. We kind of know your email addresses. So, I'll have a question towards the end of the presentation saying if you want a PDF copy, tell us and we'll send you a PDF copy of the information. Okay, this way you don't have to take notes or anything like that. I do want to mention that if you are getting continuing education credits, which I suspect a lot of you are, because you got to keep that up for your certifications, please stick around. Because we need, so don't log off, because you guys need to be, everybody needs to be on for the duration of the session in order to get the CPE credits. And secondly, please respond to the polling questions, because we do have requirements before we send you the certificate that we have to check whether you answered. I hate to do this and I hate to be a bugaboo on this, but I want you to get the credits that you're looking for. Plus, by the way, I have an ulterior motive. I want you to be engaged. So, be engaged, but then also get your credits, make sure you're answering the polling questions, and stick around till the end, okay? I promise you, it'll be entertaining, it'll be fun. I don't think you'll have your eyes rolling in your head, at any time, okay? So I wanna show you, this is part of I see that the attendees are gradually creeping up to 21, okay. Pattern recognition and informed judgment is something you guys are very good at. You make a lot of decisions if you're actually in the investment business, actually trading and managing portfolios. This is definitely true. If you're in the marketing and sales business, this is true. If you're in the operations business, this is true. Public relations, this is, pattern recognition, informed judgment. You have acquired these skills, you don't even know it. You don't even know it. When you see, a particular pattern in a stock or in a mutual fund, right? You know how it's going to behave, because you've learned, you've seen so many of these patterns, so many of these charts and graphs that you know how it's going to behave over the next month, 2 months. You make a lot of money off of it, right? Your investors rely on you to deliver returns based on that. It's a wonderful strength. We don't want you to lose your strength. Just remember though, inherent in our biggest strengths are our biggest weaknesses. You with me? I believe this to be true. Your biggest weaknesses, our biggest weaknesses, are just the flip side of our biggest strengths. If you're very good at strategy, chances are you're not very good tactically, because it bores you. The act of execution bores you. You like big picture conceptual thinking. If you're a great tactician, chances are you don't have any time for strategy. You're like, that's just, cloud stuff, right? That's just blue ocean stuff. I don't need that, okay? If you're extremely organized in everything you do, that's a huge strength. Inherent in the strength is a probable weakness that says you're not very opportunistic, you're not spontaneous, and sometimes you don't recognize things as they happen. You with me? These are all examples that I'm giving you to say to you that inherent in your incredible strength around pattern recognition and informed judgment is a potential weakness that I want you to accept and embrace. I want you to accept and embrace it. And that's this whole area of unconscious bias. Because pattern recognition and informed judgment are the mother and father of this wayward child, this little child that exists in all of us called unconscious bias. So we want you to understand what this beast is all about, and we're going to do it in 3 sections. First section is apprehend. Not apprehend as in be afraid of, apprehend as in understand. Help me in the heart. Next section, assess. I'm going to put you through some exercises. They'll be fun. We like videos, things like that I want you to watch, because I would love for you to realize and discover your own unconscious biases without my telling them to you, okay? So we'll do the assessment part. And then the last piece is address. So help me in the heart, look me in the brain, fix me in the act, okay? What can we do to mitigate unconscious bias? By the way, unconscious bias causes billions of dollars of losses overall in the global economy based on a recent study by Gallup. And it's very real. It's not one of these things invented by consultants like me to make a lot of money, okay? And I hope at the end of the session today, you're gonna agree with me, okay? But those are the 3 pieces that we will do. We'll have about an hour and 45 minutes. Before we get into that, I want you to see some of the reason why this is important and why the whole idea of diversity, inclusion, equity, and bias is important. Minority-owned businesses brought $1.4 trillion in gross receipts. These are your potential clients. You can make a lot of money off of minority-owned businesses, okay? But in order to do that, you got to understand these constituencies. You got to have representatives from these constituencies in your companies, okay? I feel, I could be wrong. You tell me if I'm wrong, okay? But I feel that this is an ignored opportunity sometimes with hedge funds, okay? And so I want you to see if you can think through this. But look at these numbers and tell me if you don't think these are segments of your customers, your investors, that you should potentially go after. Okay, there's a lot of money here, folks. And by the way, look at where the biggest amount of money is. Asian Americans punch above their weight when it comes to entrepreneurial activities. $700 billion. Okay. Hispanic, and by the way, they're only 6% of the population, okay? But they're 51% of minority-owned business gross receipts, right? Important to remember, Hispanic-owned businesses, $474 billion, 35%, African-American, $150 billion, 11%, Native American. You see the picture, okay? Number 2, and by the way, I'm saying this because some of you, I hope all of you are here because you want to be here. Some of you might be here because of your CPE. Some of you might be here, I don't know, saying, I don't know what I'm doing here. This is why you're here. And I want you to go back, if you can, and talk to your companies about this data, okay? Now, remember what I told you would give you a PDF of the data? Show them this data, because nothing convinces skeptics than real data, and this is real data, okay? Here's women-owned businesses. You see the number here, revenues, the blue line, another 1.4 trillion, women-owned businesses. You ignore women at your peril, okay? So that's number 2. Number 3, freelancer-owned businesses. A lot of these are millennials and Gen Zs, Gen Ys and Gen Zs, $1 trillion, right? You want their money in your pension funds, in your hedge funds, in your endowments. You want their money. I don't have a slide here for veteran-owned businesses, but I can tell you, you can look it up in the US Census report, $1.4 trillion. There is an amazing stability about these numbers that are earnings or gross receipts of businesses that are owned by so-called minorities. I hate to call them minorities. They're really not minorities, okay? But, sometimes marginalized constituencies, underrepresented constituencies, they are an increasingly powerful economic force that you ignore at your peril. Here's another reason why. You see these birth rates? These are birth rates per woman in the US. And you're all data wonks like me. I'm a recovering engineer, right? If something can't be measured, I can't relate to it, So look at these numbers. 2.99 is the birth rate for Hispanic women, okay? Black women, 2.13. But look at non-Hispanic white, 1.87. Asian is 2.04, Native American, 1.86. if you note the little note on the top left of the page, the average number of children a generation needs to have to replace itself is 2.07. So Asian women are barely reproducing at that rate. They're probably going to stay fairly constant, maybe grow a little bit, okay? Black women, 2.13 is higher than 2.07, but look at Hispanic, 2.99. And look at non-Hispanic white, 1.87, below the birth rate required to replace a generation. As a result of this, here's the percentage change of the US population, 2010 to 2050. This is creeping up on us, folks. You may not realize this looking around you, wherever you work, in your offices, or nowadays in the days of COVID, you look around you where you live, maybe you don't see it, but this tsunami is coming, okay? So that's why some of this stuff is important. Look at the growth rates, the massive growth rate for mixed/other, right? Massive, massive growth rates. This is like my son. You know, my son has a Indian father, I'm from India, and a Puerto Rican mom, okay? He's mixed. You could never tell. He's keys, he serves, he even speaks, you know, sulfur slang, sulfur slur, right? I can't understand him half the time. I'm like, when was the last time you saw an Indian on the slopes, Joe? His name is Joe. And he's like, I'm not Indian, Dad, I'm American, okay? My point is a lot of mixed other, 184% growth, okay? Look at Native American, relatively low. Asian Pacific Islander, 126% growth. Latino, 109%. Black, 34%. White, minus 5%. So the white population going to decline between 2010 and 2050. As a result of this, here's the pie chart of the US population 2045. 49%, 49.7% white, 50.3% other. The majority is going to become a minority. It may not have hit you yet if you are in Idaho Falls, Idaho, okay, or in Nebraska, or, you know, somewhere else where it's still primarily still a majority constituency, but it's coming, okay? Some cities and some states already, this has already happened. The minorities are the majority. And by the way, the single largest minority is going to be Hispanic, 25%. Very different from the USA that we used to know and that I came to in 1984 as a 21-year-old to get my master's in structural engineering. That time, blacks were the majority, okay, 16%, 17%. Look at what's happening, the shift even within the minority community, and look at how much the picture has changed. Millennials, by the way, that was race and ethnicity. By all of this, we're still talking about why some of this is important. If some of you are wondering, millennials are the single largest generation now. They have outgrown Gen Xers and baby boomers, and you can see how when they did it in 2015, and they're continuing to grow. And by the way, we now have Gen Zs that are coming into the workplace, right? So typical workplace has at least 4 generations. Boomers like myself, I'm 57. You have Gen Xers, okay? Then there's between 40 and 55, early 40s and 55. Millennials that are, you know, between, say, late 20s and early 40s, and then the Gen Zs. 4 different generations. And if you don't understand the different generations and what they need, you're going to have a tough time. Women exceed men in the educated workforce for the first time in a long time. Okay, so we got to factor that in. Also, this is a study by Deloitte. That's not a fly-by-night company, and I won't spend too much time on it, but you can see the impact that you can make on drivers, performance drivers, okay, as a result of diversity and inclusion. Do you see the numbers? With diversity and inclusion, you can see, I'll read it out, 30% improvement in customer service, 40% improvement in team collaboration, 80% improvement in innovation, 100% improvement in employee engagement, and 80% improvement in company performance, okay? These are real numbers taken across cross-section of industries, multiple companies, okay? So innovation is improved. This is by the Center for Talent Innovation, and you can see the numbers on this one. Okay, I'm just messing with my screen a little bit. I apologize. This thing is just bugging me. I'm trying to move some of my screens over and just isn't cooperating. There we go. Okay, 75% more likely to have a marketable idea implemented. You know, in the hedge fund business, obviously it is about gamma and theta and all of those other options Greeks, okay? Volatility, vega, right? It's a delta. I understand all of that, okay? Ultimately, it's about alpha. Ultimately, it's about alpha. You know how this industry started, right? It's a couple guys in a truck that were Goldman. And they went out and started their company. They had a couple of, trading strategies that worked. And before you know it, they grew. Lots of companies grew like that. This industry is founded on innovation. If you want innovation, you need thought diversity, people who think differently. You don't want clones of yourself. You don't want the clone army, okay? And that's what this is saying, is innovation is significantly improved as a result of diversity, okay? And now you will like this one. This is a Thomson Reuters Global Index performance from 09 to 17. I'm sure they have updated numbers, okay, to include 2020. But I want you to look at the curve on this. The blue line is the Thomson Reuters Global Diversity and Inclusion Index, starting at 100, both indices, the Thomson Reuters Global Index and the Global D&I Index, okay? The Global Index is all firms. The Global D&I Index, I believe it's 100 firms that satisfied certain criteria on diversity and inclusion, okay? You can see it's clear outperformance. What I'm saying to you folks, don't do this just because it's the right thing to do. It is, by the way. It is the right thing to do. Do it because it's a smart thing to do. It's going to improve your firm's performance, okay? You can see there's a 35% premium that the Global D&I Index has achieved over this 8-year time frame, okay? Starting at 100, the Global D&I Index is at 215. The regular global index is at 180. So 35 percentage points improvement just by investing in firms that are high on a D&I, and they have a way of measuring, which firm gets included. They have a very clear process. If you want to have the whole study, I can send it to you, okay? So it's a clear improvement performance. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm male bashing or anything. I'm not. But I want you to see the numbers, okay? Part of my job is to tell you the truth, and I hope you don't shoot the messenger, okay? But this is real data. Alternative funds run by women delivered an average of 9.06% returns over 10 years versus funds run by men at 5.28%. In 2008, when we had the whole crash, hedge funds controlled by women dropped 9.6% versus those controlled by men dropped 19%. First 4 months of this year, hedge funds run by women lost 3.5% versus 5.5% fall in an index with funds managed by both men and women, okay? Yet, proportion of women in senior hedge fund roles is only at 10.9%, and it has dropped from previous years. I don't know what it's like in your company. These are average industry statistics. And only 1% of overall hedge fund assets are run by women. Now, I'm not saying your company is like this. I don't want you to feel bad about it. I'm just putting the numbers out there in the hope that you don't shut down, okay? I hope that you don't shut down. I just want us to do more because it makes sense, not because I tell you to, not because we want to help people out. No, I want you to do this because it'll help your company do better. This industry, by the way, is built on performance. A lot of people in this industry are paid huge amounts of money for performance. More than any other industry, the alternative investment industry is fueled by performance. I'm not suggesting for a minute that we should lower the bar. You hear me? What I am saying to you is widen the gates, because your performance will improve even more if you widen the gates. What I am saying is level the playing field. Consider that at least, okay? So I'm going to start off with this polling question. I hope more people have joined. I'm not in the chat box, but I want you to answer the polling question. Kelvin Scott, who is our COO at CTR Factory, is going to open up the poll. I want you to pick whatever answer makes sense to you. Don't overthink it. Just pick the answer that occurs to you first. Does the word bias generally mean something bad? Go ahead, my friend. Kelvin, can you put up the poll? Maybe I can't see it. Are you putting up the poll?
Yes, sir. It's open.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay.
65% that voted.
Got it. Yeah, okay, great. I can't see it, but hopefully, maybe if I can't see the result, by the way, just to tell you guys, if you haven't used the polling before, which you probably have, this is totally anonymous. We're not going to know who said what. I'll show you a distribution of the answers in a couple seconds. Kelvin will, okay? That's the only reason I want us to see how we think and to be self-aware. That's the only reason we're doing it. We're not gonna rat anybody out. So just answer whichever way you want. Okay, We'll take a couple more seconds, and then Kelvin's going to put up the numbers. And maybe, Kelvin, you can read it out because I can't see them, buddy.
Okay, so almost always you have 8%, often 46%, sometimes 46%, and 0% on rarely.
Okay, 0% on rarely, 8%, 46%, and 46%. That's what I heard, okay? So what we're saying is 8% almost always, 46% often. So top two box is 54%, okay? And then bottom two box, sometimes and rarely is 46%. So kind of split between top two and bottom two, half and half, okay? So I would ask you to consider this question and tell me in the chat box, if you don't mind, why this is the case, and just type in whatever comes to mind. You know, why do you think bias generally means something bad? And I'll wait for a couple seconds as you're typing your answers in. There's no right or wrong answers. It's just what you feel, okay? So I would love for you to use the chat box and just type in, even if it's a word or two, it's fine. You know, why do you think bias generally means something bad? Well, thank you, Mitch. Yeah, the 1% number is extremely low. Yes, that is true. And we have work to do. And I can tell you, Mitch Ackles and Dolores and the entire board, the 16 people on the board at HFA are working on this, okay? It's a big part of the agenda for HFA, which we're very happy to see. And I hope it's a big part of the agenda at your companies. Dolores said, it makes me think of being negative. That's right, bias has some negative connotation, doesn't it? Like if I said to you, hey, I think you're biased, how do you feel? Do your hackles rise a little bit, right? You say, wait, you start to get a little defensive. Yeah, I'm not biased, what are you talking about, right? So I would, like if you told me I was biased, I'd start to react, right? There's something about that word that gets our, you know, that gets us going. And the reality is the reason for that, and bias can prevent leaders from hiring more diverse teams. And so that's why it means something bad, right? And Mitch believes in this firmly. Mitch believes in diversity. So he's like, hey, for me, it's a bad word because it prevents diversity from happening. Well, I would tell you part of the reason bias comes across something bad is because what are the words that immediately follow bias in the media, in the papers, the magazines, the TV, radio? You know, it's prejudice, it's discrimination, it's people being shot, right? Bad things happen right after that word, right? So that's just conditioned reflex for us because we have seen so often this word being associated with bad stuff that it's become a bad word, right? It's kind of like cholesterol. What word comes after cholesterol? Heart attack, right? Words, I guess, right? So cholesterol is a bad word because we're conditioned, we're Pavlovian in our thinking, right? And we're conditioned to say cholesterol is bad, bias is bad. Yet, by the way, stress is a bad word, isn't it? Like stress causes a lot of problems, right? So, oh, some of you put answers in the chat, in the questions box. So you guys are ahead of me. I'm not monitoring the questions box. Good catch, Mitch. Let's do the chat box if you don't mind, not the questions box, because it's tough for me to monitor both. So please, like Mitch says, let's use the chat box. I appreciate it. Thank you, folks. Okay, so, you know, stress is a bad word, yet there is good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. There is good stress and bad stress, right? There's eustress, which is good, it improves performance. And there is distress, which reduces performance. In the same way, there is good bias and there's bad bias. Bias doesn't necessarily mean something bad. So I hope you understand that, and I hope that's something you think about, okay? I'm gonna show you 4 pictures. If any of you are from New York City, I'm 15 years a New Yorker. I lived in Forest Hills, Queens, in Seinfeld's apartments. It was a 700 square foot apartment on Queens Boulevard, close to Continental Avenue. I took the F train to work 15 years, okay? And I took trains like this all the time. Now, what would you do if you had to get into a subway, an L train, an elevated train, a subway, to go to work? Which of these coaches would you pick? Take a look at the pictures for a couple seconds, and then you'll see the polling question pop up in front of you. So please answer the polling question when it pops up. But let the picture sink in for a bit. First answer that comes to mind is fine. No right or wrong answers. Which of these subway coaches would you prefer to be in if you were going into work? I'm hoping, Kelvin, you have the chat box up. If you can let me know when it's up, that would be awesome. And then let me know when you take it down. So this, because I can't see it.
Sir, are you ready for the poll right now?
Okay. Yeah, so you have the results?
No, I'm launching the poll right now.
You're launching it now? Okay, well, thanks. Thanks for telling me. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, go ahead and launch it. Yeah. Okay. Poll is open. I do see that poll is open. So Dorla said Car D. Okay. That's one vote for Car D. Okay, let's close the poll, Kelvin. We do have a hand raised. That's interesting. Do you see who that is, Kelvin? Can you open their microphone, please? I love that you guys are trying the hand raise thing. I should stop saying guys, you folks. I'm sorry.
Ken Jones, you're unmuted. You can speak.
No, that was a mistake. Sorry, I was trying to do something else.
Hey, that's fine. At least it works. We tested it out. It's all part of the plan. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so what are the poll results, Kelvin?
So for the full coach, we have 8%.
Mm-hmm.
For the break dancers on the coach, we have 8%.
Mm-hmm.
One person is 15%.
Okay.
And few people is 69%.
59, 59?
69.
69. Okay, 69. Okay, got it. Okay. If you see me bending down, I'm just typing stuff. I mean, my face, I'm typing stuff on my phone. Okay, so 8, 8, 15, and 69. 70% of us picked Coach D, like Dolores, okay? Now, here's the interesting thing. I've done this with hundreds, maybe thousands of people, right? I've done this exercise. It's almost always the same. 70 to 80% of people pick D, okay? Now, again, feel free to type in any answers in the chat box, not the question box, the chat box. But I'd love to know why you picked D. 70% of us picked D, right? Why did you pick D? Between D and C, we have 84%, right? 15% picked C. So, but I'm starting with D. Why did you pick D? Single words are fine, by the way. Okay, while you're typing it in, I'll tell you what some of the answers are that we get. People say they pick D because they'll say, well, there are 3 people in there. Mitch says, I picked it to avoid crowds. And Dolores said, on the way into work, I don't want to be around a lot of people, which makes sense, right? You don't want a big crowded coach. But the other thing I would tell you is a lot of people pick D because they say there are certainly avoid crowds, like Mitch and Dolores said, but also the other side of it is that some people say there's 3 people. It's not like just one person. So I feel a little more comfortable with a few people in there. They seem to be doing fairly innocuous things. None of them looks to be an axe murderer, so they'll say that, right? Some people will say it's well lit, it's better lit than the other coaches. Some people will say the seats are sideways so I can see the entire coach, okay? Versus C, where your back is turned to the coach. And some people will say it's got cushions so it's easier on my tushy, okay? So those are all things people say. You may or may not have thought some of these things, but can I tell you something? Your brain saw these. It just didn't surface them to the level of consciousness, maybe. But trust me when I tell you that when you picked D, the big thought bubble over your head might have been the word like safety, saying, I want to be safe, or comfort, I want to spread out, I don't want to be with crowds, convenience. Those might be the thought bubbles, but underneath those thought bubbles, way underneath, like an iceberg, underneath the conscious level, these are the things your brain computed. You just didn't even realize it. You may not have realized that the seats are sideways, but your brain saw it. And it just gave you the signal saying pick D. It was an instinctive signal, okay? But my suggestion to you is that's really what happened. You might have even not noticed the cushions, but it went into the formula, okay? This is a perfect example of unconscious bias. By the way, those of you that picked C, why did you pick C? 15% picked C. I'll tell you some of the reasons why people say C. They'll say, you know, I like the colors. They're vibrant colors. Oh, they can't see the chat box. Okay, well, I'm going to go to the question box then. If you can't see the chat box, then I'm going to go to the question box. Okay, hang on one second. I see Danielle here. Hang on. Darn it, why is this showing? You know what? I can't see the question box that clearly. Gosh darn it. That sucks. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. Okay, you know, the question box is like a little tiny thing for me, and I can't even see the darn thing. I don't know why this is, man. I hate technology. Okay, there you go. Wait. Can't find the chat box either. I see all of your comments, but I see one darn line. Okay, quiet. I'm going to try and do my best, guys, to do this, okay? But it is not, it's not easy for me here. Feel safer than one guy, quiet and more personal space, not stressful with noise and crowds, okay? I don't have chat box, okay? The breakdance train is the L in Chicago. So that would be my choice. There you go. We have a Chicago one. I have a place in Fort Wayne, Indiana, by the way. I have a place in Virginia Beach and a place in Fort Wayne. So I love Chicago as well. But my point is, you know, a lot of people will pick C, say the colors are vibrant. Some people say it's familiar, reminds me of the N and the R train if you were in New York. Some people will say, you know, the seats are vinyl and cushions attract germs. And so I prefer vinyl seats. By the way, some people will say, I don't like the long seats in D because anybody could have slept on them, you know, during the night, as often happens, you know. So you notice all these things that people say, they have all these things that sometimes they observe and they will talk, they're articulated, but in many cases, you won't go Hoosiers and Fort Wayne. Danielle is from Fort Wayne, by the way. So talk about being a small world, but I think she lives in Durham now. But anyway, thanks, Danielle. My point is, you know, everybody has different reasons. And now some people pick B, like the person said, you know, it's Chicago, reminds me of Chicago. Some people pick B because it's fun. You know, I want it to be fun. But some people will say, if I was going to, somebody spoke to the CEO about using guys. See, I stopped myself. I got to stop that because it's not right. It's a microaggression, right? So, and I've got to stop using this. I use it all the time. But anyway, so B, people pick because it's a lot of fun. People say, I like to have fun. Some folks, very few people, 8% pick B, 92% did not pick B. Now, if I change the question, and if I said to you, which coach would you want to be in on the way back from work? Do you know something? 50 to 60% pick B, because then they're more relaxed, you know? So the time of day matters, and then nobody picks A because it's too crowded. 8% picked A. I can tell you, as a veteran New Yorker, I would pick A, because I was mugged twice when I was in, it's a long time ago. It's not a reflection of the city. Crime was very high then. It was Ed Koch and David Dinkins. And I don't know if you remember those times. Times Square was a mess. And I got mugged twice. And both times it was in a coach that looked like D. Diffuse accountability is no accountability. When you don't have a throat to choke, nobody's going to step up. And everybody, I had 3 people in the coach. Nobody helped me. The people who mugged me came in from the next coach, okay? They sat next to me. There were 3 or 4 guys, and they sat next to me. One of them said, I have a knife. The other one said, I had a gun. I didn't bother to find out if they were lying. I gave them what I had. And none of the people in the coach helped me because I think everybody thought somebody else would help me, okay? So I learned very early that Coach A, I might get my pocket picked. I was always careful, didn't put my wallet in my back pocket, but I would come out of the coach with my life intact. I might get to know some people better than I want to. But so I always learn to pick A. The other thing I'll tell you, if it's rush hour and you're sitting in a coach that's empty, chances are that train is sitting at the station, not going anywhere, or it's late. So having lived in New York 15 years, I'm a prisoner of my experience. My point is this: we all showed unconscious bias. All of us, okay? Just now, in picking these coaches. Is there anything wrong with that? Do you think there's anything wrong in picking a coach that works for us? No, we're optimizing different objective functions, right? We're optimizing comfort, convenience, safety, right? Entertainment, okay? That's what we're doing, and it's perfectly legitimate. And I would encourage you to indulge in unconscious biases like these more and more. Doesn't matter. I have an unconscious bias for Starbucks coffee. Every time I see the sign on the side of the highway, my car develops a will of its own and sails off at the next exit. I can't even stop it. I don't know what comes over me, and I end up spending $4, $5 for a cup of coffee that I don't really need. I get hopped up on caffeine. Am I hurting anybody with that unconscious bias? I don't think so, other than myself with all the caffeine, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. Now, so remember what I asked you before, is bias bad? It doesn't have to be. In this case, it's not bad at all, right? I'm going to show you a second example, and I want you to play along with me, humor me like you did this time. And I'm going to show you two pictures. Okay, now suspend disbelief for a second. Don't ask me for more information of these two people, okay? I want you to decide, based on the pictures, who do you think you would select for position of marketing director? Person A or person B? Kelvin's going to put up the poll in a second, okay? So just pick whatever comes to mind. No right or wrong answers, okay? I wish this question box, you know what, let me pull it out and see. There you go. I pulled the darn thing out and it worked. Now I see your names. I can see you. There you go. I see live people. You know, this is like the sixth sense. I see live people. That's awesome. I love interaction, guys. You made me a very happy man. Okay, Julianne Casey. No chat box, only this box. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Did I pronounce the name incorrectly? Julianne? Julianne? Yeah, there you go. That's okay. That's okay, Julianne. I see you. Okay, good. Now, do we have the polling thing up there, Kelvin?
Yeah, so we had the results. The results are in, sir. So
Okay.
the person on the left was 20%, and the person on the right was 80%.
There you go. Person on the right, 80%. By the way, I do want to acknowledge some of these other things. What you do with your bias is what is bad or good. Ken Jones said. You see that? So you guys are ahead of. You guys know this all. Oh, shoot! You got to kill me. You folks know this already. What you do with your bias is what is bad or good. It's not bias itself. It's what you do with it. Ken says that. Holly says the word bias definition refers to disproportional weight. Easy to think negative. You see that? So that's very nuanced thinking, folks. So that's awesome. Okay. We do have a few lawyers on, so I don't know what else. It has ... You know, this thing is just impossible to read. But I don't know what you were saying, Danielle. So maybe what you're saying is it's not a safe environment. I don't know. I don't know what she's saying. But anyway, I love lawyers, by the way. Anita Scott, my business partner, was on the call as well. By the way, I told you we're a woman-owned company. Anita is a full equal owner, okay? And we started the company together, Anita and I. And Anita's son is going to be a lawyer. So I love lawyers. Anyway, so what's the poll answers, Kelvin?
So we had 20%
And
for
80%.
the left.
I heard you. Yeah, 20 on
80% for the right.
Got it. Thank you. So again, repeatedly when we've done this, the numbers for the person on the right are 80 to 90%. Okay. And again, that's interesting to see. Okay. And you can type up your comments in the question box if you want. Why did you pick the person on the right? I will tell you some of the answers that we get is the person on the right seems to be younger, and marketing is an online sport, and younger people probably know, you know, they're digital natives. They probably know online better. Other people will say he seems more accessible, and marketing is a contact sport, and the guy is smiling and he seems more accessible. Some people will say the guy on the right is better looking. Okay. Relatively few people, 10 to 20%, pick the person on the left. Now, those of you that pick the person on the left, I would be curious to know why you did that. And let me see here.
Hey,
Okay.
sir, can you share the screen again, please?
Excuse me?
Can you share your presentation in presentation mode again, please, so we can see the picture?
Oh, you're not seeing the picture? Gosh darn. Okay, hang on, Kelvin. Okay. Okay. So you can't see the picture right now?
No, we can't. We can see all your slides. You have to go back into presentation mode.
Okay, it is in presentation mode, but let me do this. Let me see if this works. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I apologize, technology, folks. That's the way it is. You know, maybe, you know what? You guys don't need to see my face anymore. You know, it's a face only a mother could love anyway. I'm going to turn my video off. Okay, that way it might limit the bandwidth usage. I hope you don't mind. You see me enough. You see my voice. That's good. So let's see if this helps. Okay, so 80%, and that's typically the case. And the 20% that picked the person on the left might have picked it because, you know, of the reasons like it's a marketing director role, and so you want to have somebody, you know, who can manage people. And so chances are somebody who's got, you know, who's follicularly challenged might be in a better position to do that. And, you know, so that's some of the reasons people give is, you know, that's the reason I picked the person on the left, but most people pick the person on the right. Okay. Yes, this is unfair, Julianne, that the marketing is associated. It is very unfair. And this is an example of unconscious bias. Now, I forced it. I will recognize that. Okay. I forced it on you. It's a little bit hokey. It's a little contrived because you would say to me, sorry, we would never pick somebody based on a picture. And I agree with you. But if you think that how people look and how they act and how they behave, how they speak, doesn't influence your thinking, you're dead wrong. Talk to an HR person in an unguarded moment over a beer or a coffee after work and ask them how many times they've gone to Facebook or LinkedIn to check out the picture on the profile of somebody whose resume they received that day. And they will tell you, okay? This happens much more often than you might realize. And my question to you is, it's the same unconscious bias, folks, that's working. The same unconscious bias that caused us to pick one of the 4 coaches is causing us to pick the person on the right 80%, 90% of the time. And my point is, do you think that might be a suboptimal decision on behalf of your company? It might be, right? The person on the left might be very good at marketing, might be very good at leading people, yet we tend to pick the person on the right, whereas the person on the left could be the perfectly qualified person. So my point is, unconscious bias can lead us astray when it comes to decisions like hiring. Little things like the length of a person's name, the unpronounceability of their name, how they look, how they carry themselves, what clothes they wear, influences much more than the really objective attributes like performance, competence, knowledge, skills. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, here's one final slide that I will show you, and I want you to, I'm going to get out of the question box and show you one final slide. Look at this picture, okay, and tell me which picture appeals to you more, the picture on the left or the picture on the right. Now, hopefully, Kelvin, you can hopefully put up the polling questions and
Yes, the
read
poll is launched. We're at 47% have voted.
Okay.
So I'll give it a couple more seconds,
Okay.
and I'll share the results.
Got it. Okay. And let's see what the numbers show us. Okay.
So for equality, we have 27%.
Okay.
And for equity, you have 73%.
Yes, 27 and 73. Okay. Again, it's amazing. Every audience I show this to picks similar numbers. It's actually a little more skewed to the picture on the right. This audience a little more skewed to the left. Again, there's no right or wrong answers. Okay. Now, here's the point on this one. While the previous slide might suboptimize the single hiring decision, this slide and our biases on this slide can influence the cultural environment at your company. Okay. Now, remember I said to you, there's no right or wrong answer. The 27% of us who picked equality are probably picking that because they are fans of process equity. Every single person in the left part of this picture has one crate, even playing field, okay? Now, as a result of having one crate, two people, the father and the older kid, can see the baseball game, and the little kid can't unless there's a hole in the fence that we're not aware of, okay? But chances are he can't see the baseball game. We've given everybody a crate, okay? Process equity. On the right-hand side, the father gives up his crate to the little kid, and now all three people can see the game, as is evidenced by the little one raising his hand. Obviously, he's delighted, okay? So on the right-hand side, we have outcome equity, also known as equality and equity, equal process and equal outcomes. Again, there's no right or wrong answer on this, but different situations call for process equality, different situations call for outcome equality or outcome equity, okay? When you're hiring somebody, you don't want to lower the standards for hiring, right? So everybody should be on the same page. Everybody should have the same one crate. You can't be giving somebody an advantage, okay? Now, keep that in mind, because the truth is some people have an advantage in hiring. Some people do, right? Based on if they look similar to the hiring person, if they remind the hiring person of their own youth, how they were when they were younger, right? They come from a similar background as the hiring person. They have a rapport with the person. So the reality is in hiring, everybody should get one crate, but oftentimes they get 2 or 3 crates, okay? On the flip side, on the right-hand side, once you hire them, by the way, once you hire them, there should also be pay equality. And oftentimes that doesn't exist, right? So, a lot of us picked, 76% or 73% picked the picture on the right, which is great. But I would say to you, do you think the picture on the right makes sense from a pay equality perspective? Probably not, right? If people are doing the same work and their performance is equal, then their pay should be equal, right? But even today, there's not pay equity. So my point is, in pay situations, in hiring situations, the picture on the left, it makes sense. In other situations, the picture on the right might make sense. If there is a constituency of the company that needs a little more help, that needs to be trained a little bit more, that needs to be mentored a little bit more. A lot of trading and investing is based on an apprenticeship model. You learn from the best because a lot of this is experience, not necessarily education, which is also there. You got to pass your certifications, but a lot of this is doing, right? The best laid plans that you read about go completely off once you're actually trading. So who gets picked to be mentored? Who gets picked to be sponsored? You might want to spend some time thinking carefully about how you do that, because if you give everybody the exact same training, the exact same mentorship, you may not get outcome equity. You may not have everybody performing at the same level, which is effectively what you want. You want everybody at the firm performing optimally. So my point is, in this slide, a lot of people pick the picture on the right because who would not want to have the little boy see the game? But what I'm telling you is there are many instances where the picture on the left makes sense. And there are many instances where the picture on the right makes sense. We just have to be mindful that we don't have an unconscious bias that drags us into one side of the picture inappropriately for the situation. You with me? It's not a right or wrong answer. It's situationally driven. And it's very important to remember that. Okay, so thank you for playing along with this. I'm going to go through the remaining few slides very quickly, just to catch up, and because I want you to do the assessments. This is the definition of bias. In and of itself, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a predisposition or preference. But like Ken said, it's really how you use it that drives whether it's good or bad. But the point I'll make on this slide, we tend to think of bias as driven by race and ethnicity. But there's many more dimensions to our diversity than race and ethnicity that I want us to remember. Okay, there is generation. So, do we look upon younger folks to say, hey, earn your stripes, man, earn your stripes before you get to be my level? Do we tend to not listen to them because they don't have experience? Do you know, sometimes my son, who's 25 years old, I learned so much from him because he has an unvarnished view of the world and he thinks of it very differently than me. Should I discount what he says because he doesn't have my experience? I don't think so. You have to be open to value and to wisdom, wherever it comes from. Doesn't matter. I don't care if you're the junior most person at your company. If you're making sense, then you should be heard. And if you don't make sense, you shouldn't be heard. That's what my son told me at 16. He gets it honestly. He gets it from his old man. But my point is, generation causes biases, gender, and we've talked about that already, sexual orientation, physical ability. All of these are reasons for bias because it's part of our diversity. Look at the external dimensions, the orange circle, work experience, educational background. Do you keep going back to the same college to hire people? Because you feel like, oh, we hired people from this university before and it's worked. So you keep going back. So there are biases towards that. If the partners at your company come from a certain institution, you're likely going to go back to that institution. But what you might be ignoring is that the people who came from that school have certain attributes that help them succeed. They would have succeeded if they had come from Timbuktu because they have certain attributes, okay? It's not the school, it's their attributes. But, our brain simplifies, right? We try to find correlations that may not exist or that appear to be true superficially. So those are all biases in the orange. And then in the pink circle, look at the different elements, your division, your department. If you're actually on the trading floor, how do you feel about your support staff? I've supported some alternative investment firms before. It's pretty brutal. I was doing IT support early in my career for one of these companies, and I was the bottom of the totem pole. I was only called upon if things didn't work. If their Bloomberg terminals didn't work, I was in trouble because I was costing them money. Okay, so we have biases when it comes to divisions and departments also. If you're making money for the firm, you're golden. If you're costing money to the firm, oh boy, you're relegated, But so my point is, all of these biases exist. It's not just race and ethnicity. Let's remember that, okay? So you know what? I'm going to skip this polling question. I'm going to skip it. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to get to reasons for bias. Why do biases exist? Because they exist in everybody. And the reason they exist is we get 11 million bits of information beamed at us every minute. You may not realize it, but you're getting 11 million bits of information beamed at you right now. You don't realize it because your brain suppresses it. It just deals with it. You just get to experience those bits of information that are exception basis. If the wall started crashing in where you are right now, you would see that. But as long as the walls stay where they are, you're not even going to notice the walls. These cues could be tactile, they could be visual, auditory, lingual, taste. It could be, a bunch of them, right? Kinesthetic, your body might be telling you, I'm hungry, I need to get a drink, I'm thirsty. 11 million bits. 40 is the number of bits our brains can process. 40, not 40,000, not 400,000, not 4 million, 40. So 99.996% of the stimuli that we receive are processed unconsciously. It is a survival technique that our brains have figured out, and it is awesome. It keeps us sane. The next time somebody says to you, you're biased, I want you to say, yes, I am. So are you. Because if you weren't, you'd be at Bellevue, okay? Because it keeps us sane. So I don't want us to shy away from the fact that we are biased. We are biased. I am biased, you're biased. Because it's an important survival mechanism triggered by cognitive complexity. A lot of our biases are because of these heuristics that happen underneath the surface. We don't even realize it, and the brain makes decisions automatically on an autopilot. Some of those decisions are perfect. They're right, like the subway coach. Some of those decisions might lead us astray, okay? And I liken this to the whole Lucy show, Lucy and Ethel in the chocolate factory. And I'm dating myself, so you folks are probably too young to remember, but they're at a chocolate factory packing these things, and I mean, it's on reruns, if you're on antenna TV. But they go to this assembly line, and the chocolates are coming too fast, so Lucy starts to stuff them in her mouth, and Ethel does the same thing. And it's funny if you saw it. It was funny for me. But my point is this: think about these bits of information as those chocolates. You can only stuff 40 of them in your mouth. Okay, there's no choice on that. We are cognitively limited, but what you have a choice on is which chocolate you put in your mouth and which chocolate you let go. You with me? You have a choice in what you pay attention to. What are you reflective about and what are you reflexive about? The next time you're in an interview and you just instinctively like somebody, stop. Stop. Interrupt your thinking. That's your brain. That's your brain on autopilot. Stop and interrupt your thinking, because unless you do it, it will take you along a path where you'll say, I don't know why I like this person. And I think it'd be great at our firm. And they may be and they may not be. Okay. So that's my point, is be more aware of what you want to be reflective about and what you want to be reflexive about. And what situations you want to let go on autopilot, like picking the subway coach, and what situations you want to pay mind to. Here's the strength of bias. So these are 4 words. I'm going to present 4 words to you. Okay? You tell me if what you think of the words. First word is thought. Something on our mind, haven't taken a side yet. So thought. Second word is opinion. We've picked a side, but still open to question. Third word is conviction. Opinion no longer open to be changed. Fourth word is judgment. Judgment, okay? Any other opinion is wrong. So you know what I may also ask Kelvin to do, if you don't mind, Kelvin, is can you monitor please the question and answer box for me? And I will pause periodically and ask you if there's any questions or comments that we should be responding to. Can you do that for me?
Yes, I can do that, sir.
I appreciate it. Thank you. That way I'm not switching back and forth. Okay, so think about these 4 words, folks. Okay, thought, opinion, conviction, judgment. You can see the gradual calcification that happens, right? Thought is more flexible, opinion, little less flexible, conviction, okay, judgment, you know. So now my question to you is, which of these strengths is the right strength? What do you think? What do you think is the right strength? Now, it's a bit of a trick question, okay, before you answer. Because if you are saying to yourself, I don't know, it seems like judgment is wrong, it seems like a wrong thing, just like bias, you know, judgment has some negative connotations, don't be judgmental. But I will tell you, none of these states, none of these strengths of bias are wrong. Just some are more appropriate for situations than others. And this goes back to what I said before about being aware. What is wrong is not these strengths. What is wrong is slipping into these strengths unconsciously, reflexively, because that's the space that we're most comfortable in. That's what's wrong. So I'm not saying any of these strengths are wrong. So like if you're on jury duty, right? The first day of jury duty, when you're listening to the facts of the case, what strength of bias do you think you should have? Probably thought and opinion, right? The last day of jury duty, when you're passing, you know, a decision, what state of bias, what strength of bias should you have? Probably conviction and judgment. You might be sending somebody to jail for a long time. You better think that any other opinion is wrong, right? So there's nothing wrong with having judgments at the end, but it's probably not right to have judgment at the beginning. When you start off, right, with a client, if you, let's say you're in the, you know, you're in the service delivery profession and you serve a hedge fund client, you know, you're accounting or public relations. You go to the client, they want you to do an audit, right? I'm sure some of you are accountants. You do an audit. Okay. The first day when you show up at a client, what strength of bias is good? Probably thought and opinion, discovery mode. You want to find out more. The last day of your engagement, or when you're presenting your audit findings, what strength is good? Conviction and judgment. They're paying you good money to be convinced and to have a judgment on whether their books are good or not, right? So my point is, any of these might be appropriate. It's just what is appropriate for the situation, and are you conscious about it? So I'm going to ask you a polling question. Most of us have a predominant strength of bias that we live in most of the time. All of the research indicates that. My question to you is, what bias strength do you tend to exhibit most of the time? Kelvin's going to put up the polling question.
Okay, so far we have 65% of the attendees have voted. I'll give it a couple more seconds. Now display the results. All right, for thought, we have 31%. For opinion, we have 38%. For conviction, we have 15%. And for judgment, we have 15%.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for darn it. Thank you folks for being honest and telling me that. 31, 38, 15, and 15, right? And it may have felt a little, I don't know, vulnerable to say judgment and conviction, but that's fantastic. Part of this is being self-aware, folks. I want you to be self-aware. And my only point to you, the only thing I'll say is, if you are in conviction and judgment mode most of the time, you might have received feedback in the course of your life, professional life, personal life, saying, hey, you know, you're so strong in your, opinions. Could you be a little more flexible and just hear me out? Chances are you've heard that. And if you have heard that, that's the world saying to you, be, toggle a little bit more. Step out of your comfort zone of conviction and judgment and be in thought and opinion mode a little more often. And to the extent you can pay heed to that little whisper that the world has given you, it will make you more flexible and it will reduce the bias you have. It'll be difficult to do because that's not your normal modality, but if you can try it, you'll be amazed by the feedback you get when you try it. If you try it and toggle over to thought and opinion mode, you will find people say, that was awesome. What happened? Like, are you feeling okay? Because I love that you're open to, at least you're open to listening to an opinion that's different than yours. You will get that feedback. And that's the world saying, we want to see more of that. On the flip side, if you spend a lot of time, like 31 and 38, 69% of us spend a lot of time in thought and opinion mode. You might have gotten feedback saying, hey, I wish you'd take a stand once in a while. Show some conviction, believe in something and be strong about your belief. You might have. And if you did get that, that's the world telling you, hey, be a little stronger about a few things. I can tell you, I'm most of the time in thought and opinion mode. And sometimes people will tell me, take a stand. Now, there are some things I'm very strong about, I'm very convinced about, but I'm seldom in judgment mode. I'm always open to changing my mind. I'm always open, but you have to come to me with data and evidence and I'll change my mind. But you cannot convince me, based upon emotions, okay? But like I said, I would just ask you to think about toggling a little bit more, regardless of what strength of bias you do the most. Try to toggle to the other side more often, appropriately. Thank you for doing that. Are there any comments or questions, Kelvin, that bear answering or responding to?
Yes, first of all, you have a lot of I Love Lucy fans in our audience.
Great, that's great.
But I do have a comment. Julian, if you don't mind me using your name, says, I tend to show people that I'm open to their ideas, but deep down, I hold convictions.
Ah, there you go. That's awesome, Julian. Thank you so much for being so authentic. So a lot of us are like this, guys. Oh, darn it, like this, folks. A lot of us are like this. On the surface, it looks like we're agreeing and we're open, but deep down, we're convinced. I'm sure a lot of people have discovered this about Juliana over time, that she appears to be pliable and flexible, but she's got deep convictions. Thank you for admitting that. To the extent, yeah, go ahead.
Dolores and Danielle, they both agree that judgment makes making decisions, taking action, and executing, getting things done. So that's what they see by judgment.
There you go. See that? So judgment can lead to a bias for action. So people who live in judgment mode a lot tend to have a bias for action, okay? Because they know this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it. They move faster. If you're in thought and opinion, you'll think about a lot. You'll go back and forth. You'll convince yourself of the opposite side. Okay, so decision making is a more protracted, painful process sometimes. People who are in conviction and judgment mode, they make quick decisions and move fast. Very good point. Anything else, Kelvin?
No, that's all, sorry.
Okay. So thank you for doing that. We'll keep coming back to the Q&A box. Unconscious bias exists in various areas, and you can see some of these. They impact your environment, your culture, your collaboration in your company, innovation. This will impact it. It also impacts leadership at your company. Who gets mentored? Who gets sponsored? Who gets into the succession planning process? Who gets promoted? It also impacts the talent at your company. how you recruit, who you place on projects, who has, you know, an important position managing a fund or supporting a successful fund, or an endowment, talent assessment, how you do your performance reviews. It is a very insidious force. And lastly, it impacts stakeholders like suppliers. It impacts investor relations. You know, all your investors are essentially your clients, right? Large corporations, pension funds, you know, who work with you. And then investment strategy. It impacts your investment strategy a lot. There's a whole area of behavioral economics where Kahneman and Tversky have talked about deviations from normative behavior. It may make perfect sense to invest in stocks a certain way and, you know, be rational, but we all have emotions, you know, and sometimes our emotions take over, and there's a whole school of thought around behavioral investing, and it's a very interesting school of thought. And I know, you know, Mitch has you know, people in the organization who do some work on that, but it does impact that as well. So unconscious bias impacts a lot of things at your company. I will ask you this question, and please do the polling question on this because it's revealing, and it'll be revealing for you and for me. I'm actually more curious about this. What areas of the 4 that I mentioned, environment, leadership, talent, and stakeholders, what areas do you think the unconscious bias is strongest at your firm? It is a subjective assessment. I'm not asking you to be perfect in your, you know, decisions or your choices, but just make a subjective call on this. And I'll put up, if you want, I'll put up the slide again so you can see it. Environment, leadership, talent, stakeholders. Which area do you think has the most unconscious bias at your firm? And Kelvin is going to put up the polling question. If you're hearing some noise in the background, I apologize. It is our beagle walking on the hardwood floor. Oh boy, Harley. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, folks. He's just such a cute boy, and I love him to death. And he just got out of the bedroom and he came running, so I apologize for the noise in the background. I wish I could go on mute, but I can't. Okay. So,
Okay, so we have the results.
Yeah.
For environment, we have 30%. For leadership, we have 50%.
Okay.
Talent is 10%, and stakeholders is 10%.
Okay, 30, 50, 10, and 10. That's pretty revealing to me that 50% of you think that leadership is a major area. So that's something to take back to the folks at your company. And if you are in senior leadership roles at your company, don't forget this. Don't forget it, because it's in your capacity to fix this. If you're in a position of influence or decision-making authority at your firm, and you're saying leadership is an issue, then you know you can fix this. So please go back and take some action on this realization. 30% said environment, and we know this is a hard charging environment, you know, where performance rules. And sometimes, you know, people that are quieter, more introverted, don't, you know, brag as much. Sometimes they face, you know, unconscious biases because they don't promote themselves that well. And, you know, in environments like this, you know, the people who talk the most sometimes promote themselves the most and highlight their accomplishments the most sometimes end up getting a lot of attention. So keep that in mind, folks. Thank you again for those answers. Impact of bias. I will take you through very quickly this experiment done by Deloitte and IBM. It's a computer simulation. Some of you are thinking, how much can it really affect things? Let me show you how much it can affect things. This was a computer simulation of a company, 8 levels. Level 1 at entry, level 8 at the top, 8 levels. It's 50-50 split between men and women. You'll see a picture, men will be in blue, women will be in orange, 50-50 split. 15% attrition at each of the 8 levels was modeled in the computer. Attrition was replaced by the level below. So all attrition was internal replacement. Nobody was hired from outside. Internal replacement based on performance scores. Performance scores were randomly distributed across each level. Random performance score, except for one minor bias. There was a 1% performance score bias against women. So on average, women got a 1% lower performance score than men in the simulation. Okay. Simulation was conducted until every original member was gone. So now think about that, right? If 15% leave at every simulation, then you would have had to do this 7 times to get to 105%, right? You want 100% of the people to leave. So they did this simulation 7 times. And level 1 was replaced from outside. And here's what the results when they started. See the orange and blue, 50-50, okay? 50-50. And then I want you to see what happened with when they did the simulation 7 times. Look at how it changed. Level 1 is at the bottom and level 8 is at the top, the highest level. You can see the skew that developed only at closer to the top, right? At the bottom, you still maintained because you're getting people from the outside, right? But as you move up to the top, look at how the skew changes. And this is just 7 iterations of a 1% performance bias. If you think micro inequities don't have macro impacts, remember this chart. You know, small discrepancies in how we treat people, how we evaluate them, how we promote them, if repeated over time and across space, can create massive impacts on the organization. So it's up to us to be aware of these small inequities because they lead, the scale and scope of that leads to massive impact. So this is one of those things, non-linear observations that people don't realize. They say, well, what's the big deal? Let's just, you know, this person has done a good job. Let's just promote them. Are we going to ruin the company by doing this? No, you won't. Not by that one person. Well, you might if that person is a London whale who, you know, ate up $8 billion or whatever it was in options trading. But you know, you're not going to ruin the firm by one person. But if everybody thinks like that over the next 10 years and does the same thing across the company, yes, you're going to skew the company. Okay. So here's a question I want you to please answer, a very revealing question. Answer it honestly. Nobody's going to know who you are and which company you work for. Does your company manage bias well through its processes and culture? Kelvin, put up the poll. I see that we seem to have dropped 1 attendee. We had 21. Whoever it is, please come back. I mean, I know it's, you know, they're not here to hear me, but I hope they come back, I guess. Kelvin, can we, whenever you're ready, buddy, just read out the poll answers.
So almost always, we have 13%. Often, 0%. Sometimes, 50%. And rarely, 38%.
Okay, 13, 0, 50, and 30, did you say? Yeah.
38.
38, got it, 38, okay, got it, okay. So we're saying your firm manages bias well, sometimes and rarely adds up to 88%. Okay, almost always and often, top 2 box adds up to 13%. Now, for the 13% who feel like their firm handles bias really well in their processes and culture, that's awesome. That's awesome. Spread the wealth to other companies. If you're part of HFA, share your best practices at HFA, share the wealth. That's fantastic. I'm not going to question that. I'm saying that's wonderful. For the 88% who feel like sometimes or rarely your firm manages bias, that says there's a lot of headroom for growth. That's all it says, which is fantastic. You're in a wonderful place to make an impact. And who do you think will make that impact? Who do you think will make an impact your firm? Certainly, the folks at the top have a big role to play, but all of us, I would tell you, have a role to play. All of us can be catalysts for change in our own way. So you can do small things to make a difference. Send an article out to your group that talks about unconscious bias. Share some of the PDF file that we'll give you after this presentation. I'll tell you one way, bring us in. That's self-serving. You don't have to bring us in. But I would love it if you brought us in, okay? But you don't have to do that. But there are small things you could do to impact the culture at your firm. So don't shy away from that. In your own way, make an impact, okay? Here's some research-based evidence that might surprise you. Max Planck Institute, people make decisions towards their dominant side. If somebody is sitting towards your right and you're right-handed, you would tend to favor them. Think about the impact in interview situations. Cornell and University of Pennsylvania, more personal fouls awarded against players when they're from opposite teams. They're from opposite races, different races. Oh, shoot. Did I lose you guys again? Can you see my slides? What am I doing? Okay, can you see my slide, Kelvin?
Yes, you're good now, sir.
Okay, so opposite race referees award more fouls against players that are the opposite race than same race referees. And this is in the National Basketball Association, no less. And this is a large time sample, time series sample, not just a couple of years, both conferences, okay? University of Chicago, people less likely to believe factual information when it's delivered by someone whose accent is different than the dominant accent. It doesn't have to be a foreign accent. It could be an American accent. If you're in California and you're talking to somebody from Alabama, that accent will make a difference, okay? Certainly foreign accents make a big impact as well, right? The only accent that's an exception to this rule is the British accent. For some reason, people believe British accents more. I don't know why, you know? Either you're a big hero or either you're Alan Rickman or you're Hugh Grant if you're British, right? But a lot of people, you know, like the British accent. But this is University of Chicago and MIT. The companies show a strong preference when evaluating the exact same resume with different names. I'll show you more about this study later, it'll blow your mind. Are typically white names are 50% more likely to be called back for interviews. They did this control experiment where it was the identical resume, no difference, but the names were different. And the people with ethnic sounding names took 50% higher level of effort to get a callback versus, you know, mainstream sounding names. Rice University, my alma mater, people less positive about interview candidates when they had been simply sitting next to somebody perceived to be overweight. Imagine the level of unconscious bias there. And then Yale University, this was evaluating admissions into their medicine program, is people holding cold and hot drinks found that those holding hot drinks were more positive about the interviewee than those holding cold drinks. Now you would say, come on, man, does this really make a difference? I'm telling you, your brain plays tricks on you. So my strong urging to you is outsmart your brain. Outsmart your brain. Don't let it guide you into the wrong path. Let me pause a little bit. Kelvin, any comments, thoughts that we need to address?
Yes, going back a few slides to environment.
Yes.
My firm doesn't acknowledge some of my research and contributions because performance does rule.
There you go. So performance does rule. And so say that again, Kelvin. So are we saying that the firm acknowledges the bias because they focus so much on performance? Is that what?
Specifically, what you're saying is her firm doesn't acknowledge some of her research and contributions because performance does rule.
Got it. It does not acknowledge. Okay, I didn't hear you right. Okay, so the firm is basically, hey, this is a meritocracy. You perform, you're going to do well. Nothing else really matters. Now, there are many firms in this industry and in other industries who believe the same thing. And yes, performance should count. I'm not here telling you that performance doesn't count. What I am saying is there are people who are toiling in anonymity who are performing well, And all I'm saying is let's widen the gates. Please remember, I'm not saying lower the bar. And I will stand in front of any firm CEO and tell them this. We're not talking about lowering the bar. I'm just saying there are people you're missing out who either are performing great or can perform great with some extra attention, some extra mentoring, some extra help. And so be open to that. And I'm not saying necessarily just by race and ethnicity. I'm saying by any diversity classification. It could be somebody that didn't come from an Ivy League school. It could be somebody that's older, that doesn't fit, you know, the ideal definition of a trader, okay? It could be a woman. So it could be any of those things. But what I'm saying is you will find phenomenal performances in constituencies where you're not looking right now. And that's all I'm saying. Okay, but it's a well-made comment. Thank you. Anything else, Kelvin?
Yes. Generally, men are the ones who do the most self-promotion and ask for the most ask for raises from their bosses.
That's a good point as well, and that's what sociological research indicates to us. that men on average, not every man is like this, and not every woman is a shrinking violet. So I want to clarify that. But the average behavior is exactly as stated. And so there are a couple different approaches. Women could become more aggressive, but that may feel like they're going against their natural nature, their natural instincts. The other alternative is the firm doesn't just focus on the people who speak the most, whether it's at a meeting or at a performance review. The firm actually does an objective search across the company for people who might be not talking about themselves, but doing a good job. And checking in with people who might not be doing a good job and saying, how can we help you do better? Because we see the potential in you. So that's up to the firm. But this is a two-way street, folks. I'm not here telling you that everything resides on the part of the company. We also own a part of this. And it's important we understand our own biases, right? And say, I'm biased to staying quiet. That's my bias. I'm an introvert. I used to be like that at Verizon. I would shy away from talking to senior people, but my results were always great. So people would be, and I'm not bragging, it's a fact, because I was very outcome oriented. So people would come to me and say, how the heck are you delivering these numbers? And that's how I was on a rocket at Verizon, because of outcomes. But I had a very natural bias towards not speaking up. It was very quiet. You wouldn't believe that to know me today, but yeah, I used to be like that. Thank you, Kelvin. Anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'm gonna take us through the assessment, and I'm gonna ask, I'm warning Mitch in advance so that he's ready to unmute his mic. Mitch and I spoke a lot about this topic before, and there are some great examples that Mitch has, some anecdotes and stories that I want him to talk about as part of these assessments. So I'm gonna call on him periodically in this section to speak up and tell us his stories, because they ring very true to me. And he's a great storyteller, by the way. He's not in PR for nothing. He's a wonderful storyteller. So
I'm ready to go, Suri.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so here's the first exercise. This is a video. The instructions come with the video. Just do what the video says. Now, if you've seen this video before, recuse yourself from answering the polling question after the video. I hope not a lot of you have seen it. Here we go.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
So Kelvin's going to put up the polling question, and then I'm going to ask Mick to talk about one specific story that I remember from our conversation. Okay, but let's put up the polling question, Kelvin, please. And then please read out the answers. Time flies. It's already 7:35 Eastern time, and we have until 8 o'clock. So I'm going to get through this assessment section, and the last piece on the addressing, I'm going to hit the highlights. Okay, so I'm telling you in advance what I'm going to do. So just preparing you. But I want you to take your time on this assessment piece. It's important. Go ahead, Kelvin.
Okay, sir. So 20% only the number of passes.
20% only. Okay.
10% only the moonwalking bear.
Okay.
20% got both.
Okay.
50% got neither.
What was the last number?
50.
50. Okay. 50% got neither. So 20, 10, 20, 50. Okay. So I'm going to say a few things. Okay. 20% got the number right. Okay. And 20% got both right. You know what I mean? So 40% of the folks got the number right. You understand? 40% got the number right. So 60% did not get the number right. You following me? Now, yeah, the thing was right in front of you. I didn't get the number right either when I first saw the video. But 60% of us didn't get the number right. 40% of us did get the number right. If I had paired you folks up, and see, I'm a sinner as well, but you know what? We got to keep trying. Got to keep trying. Don't stop. Keep trying. You'll get there, and I'll get there. I'll start saying folks consistently soon. But my point is, if I had paired you folks up, chances are many more of the couples would have got it right. Why? Because you would have been paired up with somebody that had the right answer. When I do this exercise, I break up the audience face to face. I'll break up the audience into tables and individuals. And I'll say the tables in the back, 3 tables, give me an answer as a table. And then the individuals in the front give me an individual answer. Do you know that every time the tables have given me the correct answer of 13, and the individuals typically vary, 60-40, 50-50, what does that tell you? There is wisdom in crowds. In the hedge fund industry, and I say this with love, there are many people who are extremely smart. They know what they're doing. They've made tons of money. They are saying, like, make the money that I make every day and then come talk to me. I know who you are, and I respect you tremendously because I can't do what you do. You've made a lot of money for a lot of people. Despite that, I will say this in all humility, you don't know everything. And the market is a tough master and a tough mistress. And it will make you learn lessons if you're not careful. So I say to you, be humble. You may be incredibly successful, but you still don't know everything. I urge you, I don't care who you are. You could be the star trader at your company. You can still learn. You can still learn. And in fact, if you're a really good trader, you are learning every day and you're hungry to learn. So my recommendation is learn from others, ask other people's opinions because there is wisdom in crowds. Now be careful about factoring in those opinions. That's up to you, but get multiple opinions. That's my first point. My second point is that 10% saw the moonwalking bear and 20% got both right. So 30% of the folks got the moonwalking bear. 70% did not. By the way, that 30% is a pretty high number. Normally, not even 10% see the moonwalking bear. But 30% of us saw the moonwalking bear. I don't know if some of you have seen this video before. If so, no worries. But 70% of us didn't see the moonwalking bear. It was right in front of our faces. Neither did I. What happened? This is attention bias. You were paying such close attention to counting the number of passes that you missed the moonwalking bear. If I had raised the level of the task and said, tell me the number of aerial and bounce passes, even the 30% who saw the moonwalking bear would not have seen it because I've done that experiment. My point is this, and by the way, if I said to you, see if you can spot the moonwalking bear, every one of you would have spotted the bear. None of you would have been able to tell me the number of passes. What you pay attention to is what you see, and stuff in the periphery of that you will not see. It is a neat exercise. I hope you never forget it. But I want to draw the connection to what happens day to day. If all you're paying attention to is somebody that performs, that has a great performance record, which is important, that reminds you of you. If you're paying attention to those things, or you're backfilling somebody in HR or in sales, that you need to fill the position fast, you'll be so focused on those things that you'll miss stuff in the periphery. You will, because of attention bias. This has a real impact on day-to-day decisions that you make. And I want to ask Mitch to give us the example of when he joined the HFA board. And I hope I say this okay, right? And I know some members of the board might be here, and I hope they're okay with this. It was him and 3 other white guys. And I want Mitch, tell the story about how you changed the composition of the board by paying attention.
Sure. So when I joined the HFA board of directors, in fact, as I was even running to be on the board of directors, and I was the spokesman of the organization, I realized that, the only people that were running each year in the election, the only people that were guiding the organization were white men. And I was proud to have been elected and added to the board at that time. We didn't have a 15-person board. We actually had a 4-person board, and I got added to it. I won. I got a good amount of votes, and I was proud of it. But I realized we were only 4 white guys. And, you know, I was always a strong believer in boosting diversity. I had been mentored by women predominantly throughout my career, and I knew that we needed to set an example for our industry. And by making phone calls, by recruiting people from my network, by asking those other people on our board to all be active and open-minded about recruiting, it wasn't that there wasn't talent that happened to be women or minorities. It was that we weren't seeking them out, recruiting them, making them aware that they could run, and encouraging them to do so. And I am proud to say that the HFA, not thanks to me, thanks to other leaders in leadership that heeded the call, we have half women and half men on our board. We are a tapestry of colors. We still have work to do. It is an ongoing effort to continue to recruit. I think there are areas where we can boost our senior leadership. African Americans, for example. I really think that consciously we can take those unconscious things that were holding us back, and we can be a true representative body of our industry. Our industry talent is diverse from all walks of life, from all backgrounds. I'm proud to be a leader of HFA, but I'm most proud of all of the things that we've done, of the fact that we are a better representative today, at least as far as diversity goes, diversity of talent, background, thought, gender. I'm very proud of the progress we've made. And I think it's an ongoing thing that we need to do as an organization. And I encourage all of our members to do the same.
Thank you, Mitch. I will also mention that, you know, he paid close attention to this. Otherwise, this would have continued on, you know, the momentum view, right? This inertia would have just continued the way it was. But Mitch paid attention. That's what I mean. Say, pay attention, disrupt the natural forces. He paid attention to this. He also, there are no events that happen at HFA without a person of color or a woman on the panel.
That's right, it's a policy.
And these are the things that make a difference, folks. And these are small things that can be done at your firms that will immediately make more people visible that are today invisible, but they're very good. They're performing well. Okay.
And I want to give a shout out, I'm sorry if you'll allow me, to Holly Singer, who was a prior VP of HFA, someone that I was happy to recruit to our board, who came to me and we talked it through and we decided together and then presented to our board that we needed to make sure that we had that inclusivity at our events, that we actively recruited speakers that happened to be women, that happened to be African American, that happened to be diverse. It's not that they didn't need to be qualified to speak or to lead. It's that we needed to make that effort. And just a shout out to Holly for helping make that possible.
Thank you, Mitch. Thank you, Holly. Now, I'm going to address some of the actions because the address part of it, we may have to skimp a little bit, but on this particular point, I want to share with you a quick technique to address this. So we've seen the issue. The technique to address it is continuously, whenever you're looking at any situation, ask yourself, what might I be missing? But better than asking yourself, like you see on the page, ask other people. And better than asking other people, ask other people that disagree with you. Which means reach out to people that you don't like. Chances are you don't like them because they think differently than you. It's very difficult to do, but I've done it. If you discipline yourself to reach out to people who think differently than you and ask for their opinion, you'll be amazed by how rich and textured their advice is going to be and how much of an impact you're going to be able to make. And you'll be able to break through this natural tendency to have attention bias. Thank you, Mitch. Okay, we're going to keep going. Here's the second bias. Here's another video. Okay, same thing. Instructions are there. Just follow the instructions.
Another game. Dan Simons is setting up an account where a clerk will converse with volunteers to see how aware they are of their surroundings. Play along with the participants in this one.
Hey, buddy. All right, real good. I got a form. Let me just grab you a pen. All right, here we go. All right, now basically all this is a release form.
Okay, stop. Have you noticed anything weird so far? If you didn't, let's run through this one again for you. I got a form. Let me just grab you a pen. All right, here we go. If you caught this one, you may be surprised to find out you're in the minority. Now, let's run this one on a few more people to see just how many of them catch the switch. Hey, what's up, buddy? How you doing? I just need you to fill out this release form, please. Let me grab you a pen. Okay, here we go. Sign and date it. So where are you from? New Jersey. How you doing today? Very good, very good. I just need you to fill out this release form. Let me grab you a pen, okay? Okay, here we go. Let me just grab you a pen for this. Okay.
Making me sign a waiver for this, huh?
All right, here we go. Yeah, absolutely. None of the next 3 people catch the switch.
Okay, so you guys saw that, right? So again, the polling question would be, Kelvin's going to ask you. Go ahead, Kelvin. Please put up the polling question.
All right, so sir, we have a 50-50 split here.
Okay, so 50% saw that the person changed and 50% didn't. I gotta tell you, you're a pretty observant audience because the numbers are typically much more skewed than that, okay? Most of the time, 70-80% don't see that the person changed. 20-30% people say that, you know, I noticed the person changed. I myself, when I saw that video, thought the person changed his shirt. I didn't realize the person himself changed. But my point is, again, you're all watching the video, 50% of us didn't see the change, okay? This is a good example of change blindness. There are 2 types of changes that go under the radar. There are small changes that happen quickly, okay? Like this one. This was a small change because the 2 people were similar in height, in complexion, you know, in physique, and so on. So it's a small change. Now, if the second person had been Shaquille O'Neal, that would have been a big change and we would have noticed it, right? But small changes that happen quickly are missed. And big changes that happen slowly are missed. Okay, big changes that happen slowly, small changes that happen quickly. So again, it's an interesting exercise. I hope you remember this. What is the application of this to the workplace?
Sir, can you go back to your original slideshow? So for some reason it switched off to create this conversation.
I think when you go to the polls, Kelvin, that's what does it. So I'm going to turn it on and off, and hopefully you guys will see it again. But can you see it now?
Okay. Yes, we're good now, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, what is an example? What's the application of it at work? Okay, now, I mean, again, this doesn't happen everywhere. So I'm not saying every single firm is rife with these sorts of things. Please don't misunderstand. But in some companies, some moments, we've been, you know, we've had engagements like this. People call us out of the blue and say, hey, we've got a situation on our hands. You know, one of our senior people said something they shouldn't have said to somebody, and now we've got a lawsuit and we need to provide training to everybody on how to be civil and polite. And you know how those things happen? Because somebody says something and there's a small change in the other person. There's a little smile or a little shake of the head, but the person doesn't really come out and say that they didn't appreciate what was said. And so the person who is talking unintentionally assumes, because they didn't see the change, they didn't see that fleeting change of expression, the pursing of the lips, the little nod, the little embarrassed grin, they didn't see it. And so they continue. The next time the joke is a little more risque or the comment is a little more intrusive. And this is how escalation happens into unsafe environments, is it never starts all at once, almost never starts with a full-blown issue. You know, the paths to perdition is paved with small steps. So this is a classic example of a boiler room type environments. And please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that exists in every company, but it can devolve. And like I told you, we've been called in firms like that to help them out. So typically those environments happen over time because of this change blindness. Small changes are not noticed. People also, big changes that happen slowly are not noticed. So people may not realize more and more employees are getting disengaged. There is a change in the culture. You hire 3 or 4 people, you know, in senior leadership positions, and the culture begins to change imperceptibly. Before you know it, the water slowly starts to boil. All of us frogs are still in the water. We don't jump because it takes a while for the water to boil, you know. And then you find people leaving the company in droves saying the temperature is too hot, I can't stay here anymore. So you have to constantly look for these changes as you are evolving as a company. What are the big changes that are happening slowly at your firm? Also in your external environment, what's happening, as well as small changes that happen, you know, that happen quickly, okay? Let's see here. I mean, by the way, one example of this is the example that I told you about women versus men. Investment styles, on average, women tend to be more conservative. So when there is a downturn, and you know there's always going to be bear markets, funds that are managed by women tend to do better because they are more conservatively positioned than funds that are managed by men. I'm not saying this, 3 or 4 different studies have shown this. And so my point is, are you seeing that data? Are those changes being observed by you? And the best way to fix this, by the way, is, I'll tell you the fix, is be aware and mindful of changes as they happen. So for example, I have a little notebook and I'll write down stuff, I don't do it as often as I used to, that I see different every day. Like, what are some changes that I saw today? And it could be in a client, it could be in one of my colleagues, it could be in the environment of the company, the external environment. I'll make a note if I saw something. And then if you read all your notes over the last month or year, it's amazing the trends that you find that you would have never picked up. And by the way, even in investing philosophy, okay, you tend to invest more and more capital the more successful you get, and you put more and more money behind the strategy. But you know, the market is very tough to beat, and it will keep, you know, seducing you to do that, and then it will wham, you've put too much money. You've forgotten risk management principles, you haven't hedged your bets. You used to do spreads and now you're doing naked options. You know, that's how these big London whale type of things happen. They don't happen all of a sudden. So please keep in mind, okay? Okay, so let's look for the next piece, diagnosis, okay? So diagnosis bias, okay? So I'm going to show you 2 pictures and it'll be a polling question. I want you to answer the question. Geez, it's already 7:54. Which of these 2 people are more dateable? You heard me right, more dateable, either for yourself or for friends or family. Which of these 2, and go with what comes to mind, you know, don't try to outsmart the picture, just, you know, just answer what you think, okay? Which do you think is more dateable? Go ahead, Calvin, and let's accelerate the polling questions if you don't mind. People should have gotten the hang of it by now.
All right, sir. 100% of the attendees selected the gentleman on the right.
100%. So most people think, oh, he's a good-looking person, you know, he looks like a, you know, hedge fund guy, alternative investment guy. So the person on the left, his name is John Fetterman. He is currently Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania. Can you still see my slide, Kelvin?
Yes, they can see your slide.
He's the mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania, suburb of Pittsburgh. If you guys live in Pittsburgh or you folks live in Pittsburgh, you'll know him. The tattoo on his arm is a zip code. He has a master's degree from Harvard. I think his undergrad was from Yale, served in the Marine Corps. He's a patriot, and he's brought a lot of private industry approaches to local government, and he's brilliant. I've heard him speak. He ran for Congress. The last election, lost, but we haven't heard the last of John Fetterman. His wife is a model. They make a very dashing couple. The guy on the right is actually Ted Bundy, the American serial killer, and who confessed to killing 30 women. And the reason we say this is, we do this all the time, is we diagnose situations wrong because we pick up on the wrong cues. If somebody's coming late to work a lot, we say, the work ethic is off. There could be probably 5 other reasons why they're coming late to work all the time. You know, the time they leave home might be rush hour traffic. They might have somebody, kids to take to school, a senior person in their home that they're, you know, caregiver for. They may have some other, you know, different ability or disability that causes issues. They may have to drive slower than whatever. You know, there could be a bunch of reasons, but we gravitate to the one thing that pops up in our mind, and we diagnose the problem wrong, and we put in the wrong solutions. Okay. Now, you know, this shows up a lot when it comes to diagnosing workplace situations, performance reviews, because we tend to gravitate to the most readily available cause in our minds, or the most recent cause in our minds for whatever performance issues we see, and we don't think through all of the other reasons. So, and by the way, this shows up a lot of the time outside the business. You know, a lot of the things that happened, I hate to bring it up, but it's the fact, you know, Jacob Blake, or you think about George Floyd, or Breonna Taylor, or Ahmaud Arbery, you know, think about all of these situations. It was an issue with diagnosis. It was, and I'm not saying, I mean, those folks are to blame and they should pay the price. I'm not saying anything, okay, don't get me wrong, but whether consciously or unconsciously, there was a diagnosis problem. And I want Mitch to step in and talk a little bit about the example about the gentleman who looked like a bum. I won't mention his name. Go ahead, Mitch.
So years ago, I was the global marketing manager for Dow Jones Trade Station, and I was working at our first annual conference in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace at the registration table, which I still am at HFA events now. And a gentleman walked over towards the table, looked scraggly, sort of had glasses on, was disheveled, and I thought he was a homeless person or a crazy person in Vegas. So I was about to motion for security, and I come to find out that that person was one of our clients, and his name was Mitch Kapoor, the founder of Lotus Corporation. And he was dressing that way because he didn't want to come to the attention of the people in the casino, but I certainly prejudged a billionaire, and I was about to have him thrown out by security.
Thank you, Mitch. That's a perfect example. I'll also mention real quick, you know, Mitch happens to be Colombian and white. Now, you guys might not know it, but his parents, you know, were in Miami. His grandfather on his mother's side was mulatto. It was black. And one time he was hanging out with his grandfather, right, Mitch? And the cops came, and because Mitch.
It was worse than that. My grandfather came from Bogota to surprise me, and he went to pick me up from elementary school. My mom had called ahead and said that his grandfather's coming to pick him up. And because he was mulatto, before they got to me, they called the cops. And they were about to arrest him. And, you know, he was very dark-skinned. And obviously those that know me, see me, and read ACLs, they probably don't see Colombian. But he's my grandfather, my mentor. He was the Minister of Labor of the country and on their Supreme Court for 20 years. And he was an absolute genius and a person whose example I try to emulate every day. But that was devastating to me mentally that they called the cops on him.
How traumatic would that be? Think about it, you know. Thank you for that, Mitch. Appreciate your openness to sharing that. But these happen all the time. Again, the fix to this is be very aware. When your brain tricks you into a snap judgment, stop, interrupt it, and then say, let me list the possible reasons for this, and then eliminate the potential reasons that don't have evidence, eliminate it, and follow a more careful process to figure out what is really going on. But try to, for really important decisions, try to avoid snap judgments. We are at 8 o'clock. If you can hang in there, we started a little bit late because of stragglers, so I would like to take 5 more minutes. If you guys, some of you folks have to leave, that's fine. I'd love for you to stick around. Here's the next one. I told you about the experiment. The University of Chicago and MIT sent out resumes in response to ads in the newspaper. The ads were real, the resumes were fake. The ads were for sales executives and executive assistants. It's published, it's a seminal work in diversity and inclusion. The control group had names like Brendan, Greg, Emily, and Ann. The experimental group had names like Tamika, Aisha, Rashid, and Tyrone. It took, the response rates to the resumes were 10%. 1 in every 10 resumes got a response for the control group. 1 in every 15 resumes got a response for the experimental group, which means there was a 50% higher level of effort. If you had an ethnic sounding name, there was no other difference in the resume. So value attribution is real. Many companies are eliminating irrelevant information. I would strongly urge your company to do the same. If you send your resume to Google now, if it's an electronic resume, they will anonymize it. They will remove your name. So there's no Q on your gender or your ethnicity. They will remove your graduation dates. So there's no clue about your age. They will remove any evidence of geography, so people won't know where you're from. They had a strong bias towards Silicon Valley people. And they will remove the name of your college or university because they loved Ivy League folks. The founders of Google went to Stanford. So when they did all of this, and this is written up in a book called Work Rules by Laszlo Bock, the former chief HR officer of Google. And so he says that initially there was a rebellion in the ranks of HR saying, you're making us blind, but now they have much better people, much more objective, and they're thinking it's amazing the impact you could have. Here's affinity bias. This, you can do this exercise yourself. Think of 3 people that you hang out with the most at work. Go down the list and put an X on the attribute where they are similar to you. Do it for all 3 people. I would bet dollars to dimes. I might have to pay you folks a lot of money, but I'll bet dollars to dimes that the average number of X's in any column is 7. And the reason I know that is because we've done this with thousands of people, and that's what it shows up. That's the average of a statistically valid sample. The average is 7, which means 70% of the folks that we hang out with, they are similar to us on 70% of these attributes, which means you're talking to people that are a lot like you. As a next follow-up exercise, if you were to intentionally pick 3 new people where they only had 3 X's, remember, intentionality is the big solution for unconscious bias. Be aware, intentionally disrupt the bias. That is absolutely critical. First piece is be aware. Second thing is intentionally disrupt. And the third thing is behavior modification. Just make sure you're practicing new behaviors. So if you intentionally disrupt this, if we've done this experiment, people come back and say, I was amazed by how much different inputs I got when I changed deliberately the people that I spent time with. Okay, so that's one. Lastly, one last video. Please view this video, okay?
Watch the image on your screen closely. We've got a quick question for you about these 2 squares. True or false? This top one here is a darker gray than the bottom one. Pretty obvious, right? Well, maybe not, because the answer is actually false. Believe it or not, they are exactly the same color. Still don't believe these 2 squares are the same shade of gray? This man, experimental neuroscientist Bo Lotto, is going to show you why your brain is constantly being fooled by what it sees. Take a look at the illusion again. If you want, try holding up one of your hands and block this section of the image. If you're having trouble seeing it, we'll help you out. Crazy, right?
Okay, so you can see this pattern recognition. Sometimes we see patterns that don't exist. Remember the example that I gave you about universities where you've hired successful people from? The real pattern is the attributes of the person, not the university, but we end up making correlations to the university. That's a great example. The other thing is the pattern might be correct, but it doesn't apply to the current situation because the current situation is different. So we're fighting yesterday's battles today. That happens a lot as well. And so please keep that in mind. Question the lessons of experience. Every time you say, I've seen this movie before, oh, I know this has happened before, stop, interrupt, right? Because you could be dealing with pattern recognition bias. We're not going to do these exercises, but I hope we reconvene. I'm happy to reconvene, go through some of these case studies with you. I do want you to, if you can, because we want to follow up with you, do this one final polling because we want to understand how to serve you better. And so if you want a PDF version of this presentation or summary version, please click on that option. You can click on more than one. We also offer text-based coaching on a complimentary basis for a couple of months. So please let us know if that would be of interest. And then if you would like more sessions like this at your company, we would like to get a sense of at least how the histogram looks, okay? And feel free to answer any way you want. This is a good next step. Kelvin, please put up the polling question and let's see if we can get folks to answer this. The piece that, as you're thinking about that, the last section around addressing some of these biases, it has some neat techniques, but I covered a fair number of those techniques in the first two sections. I would have gone into a little more detail in the last section, but we probably have to keep that for another time. Kelvin, do we have we don't have to give the answers of the polling, but do we have the polling question up?
Yes, we do, sir.
Okay, so leave it up there. Let's give people some time to answer the questions. Here are some of the strategies that are in the last piece. We will offer this to you as part of the PDF file so that it's there for your records. Constructive uncertainty is a good one. Data-driven debunking, always, especially in hedge funds, alternative investments, data is key. So offer the data. It really will help you make an impact and drive different decisions. Objective decisioning, like we talked about the Google example. Orchestras have improved significantly their diversity composition by just having blind auditions. It's similar to the, anonymizing resumes. Thought diversity harnessing, if you look at feminine versus masculine prototype, it's not about hiring women, it's about hiring people who think a certain way, really. And women tend to think a certain way on average, and you can see the differences, and you can see how they complement and supplement the masculine way of thinking. Okay, it's not so much gender as the kind of thinking and behavior, and you can see those differences on this page. So you can harness gender diversity brilliantly if you focus on that. Micro affirmations and micro inequities, very, very important. Listening carefully to people, smiling at them, looking them in the eye, remembering who they are. We have technically brilliant people at your companies. Okay, I'm not sure that all of them have great people skills. I'm just being honest with you. Okay, maybe that's what makes them brilliant, is they don't focus on that. But I feel like they need to, and this is part of that. It's important when they come into the office, say hi, be nice, small things, supporting people, asking them questions, listening to them. Digital infrastructure, there's plenty of apps, and we can talk more about this. We have a whole range of apps that you can use. Textio will remove gender bias in job descriptions. Gap Jumpers will do blind interviewing. Even on Zoom, you won't see the person's face. Hire Certain does questionnaire-based hiring. It's our product. Let me just reveal. It's our product. It works brilliantly. You don't need a resume at all, so there's no bias at all. Blendor is like Tinder for jobs. This is a good exercise. Figure out what your most significant personal bias is and how you might address it. And then organizationally, if you have lunch and learns, brown bag sessions, pick an area, a process, and ask your team how we can do better, how we can eliminate bias. I apologize for going through this last piece quickly. I appreciate your sticking with me for 2 hours. It's been wonderful spending time with you. Kelvin, is there any burning questions or comments that we need to address before we adjourn?
No, sir, there are not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mitch, Dolores, thanks to you. Thanks to the HFA board for entrusting us with this session. I hope people got a lot out of it. They're available to do more of these if you folks want to. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yeah, it
sir.
was great. Thank you so much.
We love you guys. I love you folks. Jeez. Have a good one. Have a
Ladies
good one.
and gentlemen,
Wonderful.
thank you, Dolores. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Hopefully you got as much out of it as I did.
Take care.